Close your eyes for a moment and picture a realm untouched by time, a hidden kingdom wrapped in twilight, where ancient trees whisper secrets and the air hums with unseen magic. That is Doriath, a sanctuary woven from dreams and guarded by something far more powerful than walls or swords, the Girdle of Melian. Tonight, we step into this enchanted forest, where every rustling leaf and shifting shadow tells a story of love, power, and the delicate balance between safety and solitude. Where are you listening from right now, and what hour has settled over your world as we begin this journey together? Let us know in the comments below, because stories like this are best shared, especially when the night grows quiet and the imagination stirs. At the heart of Doriath stands Melian, a being of radiant grace and fathomless wisdom. Her very presence, a melody woven into the fabric of the forest. With hands that shape the unseen, she spins threads of enchantment through the air, crafting a barrier so subtle yet so strong that none may pass without her leave. This is the Girdle of Melian, a living, breathing spell that bends perception and turns malice aside like mist before the sun. Her beloved, King Thingol, watches in silent wonder, knowing their kingdom's fate rests upon this shimmering veil. But beyond the trees, beyond the safety of her magic, darkness gathers. Whispers slither through the undergrowth, tales of envy, ambition, and those who would tear the girdle apart for a glimpse of what lies within. What does it mean to be protected, truly protected, when the cost is isolation? Melian's magic is a gift and a burden, a shield that keeps danger out, but also locks the world away. As we wander deeper into this tale, we'll uncover the price of such enchantment, the fragile hearts beneath the crowns, and the shadows that even the mightiest spells cannot hold back forever. So settle in, let the weight of the day fade, and allow yourself to drift into the twilight of Doriath. The story is just beginning, and every whisper on the wind has something to reveal. Melian moves through the ancient trees like moonlight given form, her fingers trailing through the air as if plucking invisible strings. Each step hums with power, her voice a quiet melody that tightens the threads of her spell, reinforcing the girdle stitch by stitch. The forest responds to her presence, leaves shiver where she passes, roots shift subtly beneath the soil, as though the earth itself leans in to listen. Yet even here, in this realm of her own making, she cannot silence the whispers slithering at the edges of her mind. Something dark coils beyond the borders, a pressure against her magic, patient and hungry. Morgoth's shadow stretches long these days, and though her barrier holds, she feels its weight like a storm, gathering just beyond the horizon. Her hands pause mid-motion, the song faltering for a heartbeat. To weave the girdle tighter would mean greater safety, yes, but also greater solitude. Already, Doriath grows quieter, more distant from the struggles of those outside. Can she truly shut out the world forever? The thought aches. There are voices beyond the trees she once knew well, certain by the sea. Finrod and his cavern's friends, who might stand with her if she dared reach out. But to lower the girdle, even for a moment, is to risk everything she and Thingol have built. The choice gnaws at her, a thorn beneath the skin. For now, she chooses vigilance. The song resumes, softer but steadier, as she walks the boundary between safety and surrender. Every note is a promise, a warning, a plea. The girdle will hold. It must. Yet in the hush between verses, even Melian wonders what cost will come with such unyielding protection. And when the shadow finally pushes harder, will a barrier woven of starlight be enough? The whisper of footsteps echoes through the forest, not the light tread of elves, but something fiercer, a rhythm edged with urgency and the faint tang of smoke. Messengers arrive at Thingol's court with news that sends murmurs rippling through the halls. The Noldor have returned, not as exiles seeking refuge, but as warriors, their eyes alight with a fire that even the starlight cannot soften. Vanor's sons lead them, their names spoken with both awe and unease, for their deeds in the far west are already woven into tales of both valor and vengeance. Thingol listens, his fingers tightening around the arm of his throne. These are kin, yes, but kin who carry the shadow of their own choices. Should Doriath open its arms to them, or does their arrival herald a storm? He looks to Melian, whose gaze is distant, as if tracing the threads of fate itself. She feels the heat of their spirits, the restless energy that crackles around them like lightning seeking ground. They burn too brightly, she murmurs, and fire, unchecked, will always find something to consume. Yet pride and pity war within Thingol. To refuse them entirely would be to turn his back on shared blood, but to welcome them without caution could unravel the peace Melian's girdle has preserved. In the end, he chooses a middle path. The Noldor may pass through Doriath, but only in small numbers and never to linger. It is a compromise meant to balance mercy with wisdom, but compromises, like seeds, take root in unexpected ways. The first groups cross the threshold, their armor gleaming, their voices rich with songs of a homeland lost. The Sindar watch, fascinated and wary. There is beauty in these strangers, yes, but also a hunger, a sharpness that does not belong beneath these gentle trees. Whispers begin, not of unity, but of difference. The Noldor speak of kingdoms to reclaim, of oaths that bind them, while the Sindar wonder what happens when such oaths clash with the quiet harmony of Doriath. Melian walks the borders of her realm that night, her song a whispered counterpoint to the distant echoes of Noldor campfires. She feels the first faint strain against the girdle, not from outside, but from within. A tension woven by choices, by grudges yet unspoken. The threads of her magic still hold, but for how long? Every kingdom, no matter how well guarded, is only as strong as the hearts within it. And hearts, she knows, are far harder to protect than borders. The forest holds its breath as a lone figure stumbles toward the edge of the girdle, his cloak torn, his eyes shadowed by grief, too heavy for his youth. Turin, son of Hurin, walks with the weight of a world that has shown him little kindness, exiled from his homeland, haunted by loss, yet still carrying himself with the stubborn pride of his house. The enchantments woven into the air tremble as he nears, threads of Melian's spell quivering like spider silk, brushed by a passing hand. She feels him before she sees him, this boy with a warrior's bearing and a heart cracked by sorrow. There is something in his spirit, a flicker of light undimmed by darkness, that stays her hand. For the first time in years, the girdle parts, not for an army or a king, but for one lonely soul. Doriath welcomes him, though its halls are not unkind. The elves of Thingol's court see in Turin both a curiosity and a mirror. His grief reflects their own hidden wounds, his anger their quiet fears. He is given shelter, training, even the friendship of the king himself. Yet from the moment he crosses the threshold, the air hums with unease. Melian, who has spent ages reading the threads of fate, watches him with a quiet sorrow. She knows what he cannot. His path is tangled with shadows, his name whispered in the same breath as doom. But to turn him away would be to deny the very mercy that makes her realm worth protecting. The trouble begins softly, like the first drops of rain before a storm. Turin's pride, forged in hardship, clashes with the careful politics of the court. A careless word here, a defiant glance there, each spark finds tinder in old grudges. Some among the Sindar still remember the Noldor's fiery presence, the way their ambitions once strained the peace of Doriath. Now this mortal, bold as any elf lord, walks among them as if he belongs. Whispers coil through the halls. Who is he to earn such favor? What right has a man to stand beside immortals? Even kindness becomes a weapon. When Beleg's strongbow, loyal and true, offers Turin friendship, it only sharpens the envy of others. Melian feels the change like a shift in the wind. The girdle still stands, but its magic trembles under a new weight, not from outside, but from within. Every glance, every muttered word is a thread fraying. She could tighten the spell, force harmony upon them all, but that is not her way. A kingdom built on compulsion is no kingdom at all, and so she watches, waiting, as Turin's footsteps echo through the corridors of fate, each one bringing him closer to a choice that will test the strength of Doriath's fragile peace. The day comes when the whispers grow too loud to ignore. An accident, or so it seems, leaves a life lost in blame, laid at Turin's feet. Truth matters less than perception. The court's patience wears thin. Even Thingol, who once saw himself in the boy's defiance, hesitates. Only Melian sees the full tapestry. This is not merely about Turin, but about the cracks in a realm that believed itself untouchable. The girdle was never meant to keep out sorrow, only violence, and sorrow, she knows, slips through even the finest weave. When Turin leaves, it is not in disgrace, but in a storm of his own making. He refuses to be pitied, to bend, and so he walks away, head high, into a world that has never spared him. The girdle does not stop him. Melian lets him go. Some threads must unravel, so others may hold. Yet as the trees swallow his retreating form, a question lingers in the air, heavy as twilight. When a sanctuary bends for one, who else will come seeking the same mercy? And what happens when the weight of all those stories becomes too much for even magic to bear? The Silmaril gleams in Thingol's palm, its light colder than starlight, brighter than fire. It should be a triumph, a proof of his daughter's courage, a jewel wrested from Morgoth's very crown. Yet as he turns it in his hands, something shifts in his heart. The longer he gazes into its depths, the more the world outside seems dim, unworthy. His halls, once filled with the murmur of leaves and laughter, now feel too small for such splendor. When Beren and Luthien kneel before him, their hands still scarred from their quest, he does not see their sacrifice. He sees only what they did not bring, the other two Silmarils still lost, still unclaimed. Melian watches in silence as her husband's voice grows sharp, his words laced with a hunger that was never there before. A single jewel is a beggar's portion, he declares, though Doriath has never wanted for beauty. The Noldor owe more than this. She reaches for him, her fingers brushing his arm. a touch that once would have stilled his storms, but he pulls away, and the space between them hums with something new, distance. The girdle, woven from their shared love, flickers at the edges, threads loosening where their hearts no longer align. The court holds its breath. Thingol's demand echoes beyond the borders of Doriath, carried by wind and rumor to the ears of Feanor's sons. Their oaths, long dormant, coil tight at the insult. Melian hears the change in the forests, song the way the roots tighten. The leaves shiver as if sensing thunder. She tries once more to speak reason, her voice low as twilight. Pride is a chain, she murmurs, and chains once worn are hard to break. But Thingol only smiles, the Silmaril's glow reflected in his eyes. What is pride to kings? He asks, but the right to claim what is owed. The first cracks are subtle. A trader from the east finds the hidden path suddenly clearer, his footsteps no longer turning in circles. A scout reports whispers at the border, voices that should not have pierced the girdle's veil. Melian walks the realm's edge each night, her song strained as she tries to mend what is fraying. Yet magic cannot heal what is broken between hearts. With every demand Thingol makes, with every glance he spares for the Silmaril over his people, the threads unravel further. Luthien, who once danced through these woods with a lightness like birdsong, now moves like a shadow. She sees the change in her father, the way his laughter has turned to ice. She sees her mother's silent grief, and she wonders, was the jewel worth this? The answer comes in the hush of the trees, in the way the wind carries the scent of smoke from distant fires. Some treasures, she learns too late, are not held in hands but in the spaces between them, and those once lost are the hardest to reclaim. The day the dwarves arrive, their eyes sharp with greed, their tongues slick with flattery, Thingol welcomes them as allies. He speaks of a crown fit for a Silmaril, of gold and gems to outshine the sun. Melian stands at the threshold of their chamber, her presence unnoticed, her warnings unspoken. She knows what comes next. Love built Doriath, pride will unmake it, and the girdle, that shimmering shield, will not hold against the storm that gathers, not when the greatest threat now walks within its walls, wearing her husband's face. The dwarves work in the heart of Menigroth, their hammers ringing through the halls like a grim counterpoint to the whispers of unease. Thingol watches from his throne, fingers drumming against the armrest as they set the Silmaril into his new crown, a circlet of gold and mithril meant to outshine the very stars. At first, their craftsmanship seems a marvel, their deference flattering, but as days pass, their gazes linger too long on the jewel's glow. Their voices, once honeyed, grow edged with something darker. Melian sees it before the others, the way their hands tremble when they touch the Silmaril, the hunger in their eyes when they think no one watches. She warns her husband in hushed tones, her voice barely louder than the rustle of leaves. They are not artisans anymore, she murmurs. They are thieves in waiting. Thingol dismisses her fears with a wave of his hand. Dwarves know their place, he replies, blind to the way their leader, Úthedhin, has begun measuring the distance to the gates, the strength of the guards. The crown is finished at last, a masterpiece that should have been a triumph. Yet when Thingol places it upon his brow, the dwarves do not bow. They stand rigid, their fists clenched. Our payment, Úthedhin demands, his voice stripped of courtesy. And here, Thingol makes his final mistake. He laughs. Payment, the honor of touching such a jewel, is reward enough. The silence that follows is thicker than fog. The dwarves exchange glances, a silent language of betrayal spoken in the clench of jaws, the tightening of grips on tools that are no longer tools but weapons. When they strike, it is with the fury of those who have been cheated of more than gold. Thingol falls first, his blood staining the very crown he prized too highly. The halls of Menigroth, once a sanctuary of song, become a nightmare of screams and clashing steel. Melian feels each death like a tear in her own flesh. The girdle shudders, its magic fraying as violence spills across the sacred groves. She reaches for her power, but grief is a weight even a Maia cannot shrug off. The enchantment that once turned enemies aside now trembles like a wounded thing, its threads snapping where dwarven axes hack at the ancient trees. Somewhere in the chaos, Luthien flees with the Silmaril clutched to his chest, his laughter echoing like a curse. Outside the shattered gates, the forest itself seems to weep. The dwarves' betrayal is not just a theft, it is a wound in the world. The trees that once bent to Melians will now stand rigid, their leaves falling like tears. The air, once sweet with magic, reeks of smoke and iron, and Melian, who has stood unwavering for ages, feels something she has never known before: doubt. The girdle was woven to keep out evil, but what happens when evil is invited in? When the very hands that built a kingdom are the ones to break it? In the days that follow, the survivors gather in hushed clusters, their voices raw with grief. Luthien, her face pale as moonlight, kneels beside her father's body. The crown lies broken, its gold twisted, the Silmaril gone. She does not weep. Her sorrow is too deep for tears. Melian stands at the edge of the ruin, her hands pressed to the earth, as if she might mend it through sheer will. But some breaks cannot be fixed. The dwarves have taken more than a jewel. They have taken the illusion of safety, the belief that Doriath was untouchable. And now, as the wind carries the scent of burning wood from the east, a new truth settles over the realm. No magic, no matter how strong, can shield a heart that has already turned to stone. The girdle may still shimmer in the twilight, but its strength was never in the spell alone. It was in the love that wove it. And love, once spilled like blood upon the ground, is not so easily reclaimed. Luthien stands at the threshold of the forest, her fingers brushing the bark of an ancient beech, as if memorizing its texture. The girdle's light dances weakly around her, no longer the radiant shield of her childhood, but a flickering echo, like the last embers of a dying fire. Below her feet, the earth hums with the memory of song her mother's song, the one that once wove safety into every root and branch. Now it tastes of ash. The dwarves are gone, the Silmaril stolen, and her father's blood has seeped into the stones of Menigroth. The weight of it all presses against her ribs until she can barely breathe. What is left for her here? A kingdom in ruins, a crownless throne, a mother whose grief runs deeper than any river. Melian finds her there, her presence as soft as mist, settling over the grass. She does not speak at first. There are no words sharp enough to cut through such sorrow, no magic gentle enough to mend it. Instead, she lifts a hand to her daughter's cheek, her touch cool as moonlight. In that silence, Luthien feels the unspoken question: will you go? It would be so easy to step beyond the girdle, to let the world carry her away from this place of broken promises. Beren waits somewhere beyond the trees, his own heart scarred but steadfast. Together, they could leave Middle-earth behind, seek shores where grief cannot follow. But the wind shifts, carrying the scent of crushed leaves and damp soil, the smell of home. Even now, Luthien closes her eyes. She thinks of her father's laughter before the Silmaril poisoned his pride, of dances in glades where the stars tangled in her hair. This land is her marrow, her melody. To abandon it would be to tear out a piece of her own soul. Yet staying means facing the hollowed halls, the whispers of a people who trusted their rulers to keep them safe. Melian's fingers tighten slightly around hers, a silent plea. The girdle shudders, its light dimming further, as if mirroring her conflict. It was never just a spell, Luthien realizes. It was a promise, to protect, to cherish, to endure, and promises, even shattered ones, leave echoes. I do not know if I can rebuild what's broken, she whispers at last. Her mother's answer is barely audible, woven into the sigh of the branches above them. Neither do I, but we can plant something new in the cracks. For the first time since the killing began, Luthien feels something stir in her chest, not hope, not yet, but the faintest pulse of possibility. The girdle flickers once more, not fading but changing, its light no longer a barrier but a beacon. Perhaps endings are just beginnings in disguise, and perhaps when the time comes, she will not walk away from Middle-earth, but walk through it, carrying Doriath's legacy not as a burden, but as a seed. The air tastes of iron and old smoke as the sons of Feanor cross into Doriath, their armor black against the dying light. The girdle, once a shimmering veil no enemy could pierce, now parts before them like mist before a blade. It does not break so much as sigh apart, its magic frayed by the weight of Thingol's pride, Melian's grief, the blood spilled over a jewel that was never truly theirs to claim. Menigroth leads them, his face a mask of grim resolve, though his hand trembles on his sword hilt. Even he feels it, the wrongness of this march, the way the trees seem to weep as they pass. But oaths, once sworn, are harder to unmake than kingdoms. Melian stands atop the ruined gates of Menigroth, her robes stirring in a wind that carries no scent of leaves, only ash. Below her, the survivors of the dwarves' betrayal scatter like startled birds, their cries thin with panic. She could raise her voice now, could weave one last terrible song to turn the invaders back. But what then? More blood, more broken vows. The Silmaril is already gone, carried off by dwarven hands or sunk into some dark river, its light lost, just like the peace it cost them. Her fingers curl into fists at her sides. She is a Maia, older than the sun and moon. She could drown these warriors in shadows, could make the very earth swallow them whole. But power has never been the question. It is purpose that falters now. A child's wail rises from the chaos below, sharp as a knife. Melian closes her eyes. This is the truth no tale ever tells, that even the mightiest enchantments are only as strong as the hearts that hold them. The girdle was never just magic. It was love given form, a promise between her and Thingol to shelter all who dwelled within. With him gone, with Luthien walking her own path, the spell has nothing left to anchor it. The threads snap one by one, not with a roar, but a whisper, like a sigh finally released after centuries of holding breath. Menigroth and his brothers step into the clearing before Menigroth, their swords unsheathed, but not yet raised. They expected resistance, a final stand. Instead, they find only silence, and a woman with stars in her hair, watching them with eyes too ancient for pity. "It is over," Melian says, her voice softer than they deserve. "Take what you came for if you can find it. But know this, no oath justifies what you do today. Some fires, once lit, cannot be quenched." The youngest of Feanor's sons, Amras, flinches as if struck. But Midros only nods, his jaw set. He knows the cost. He has always known. As the last threads of the girdle dissolve, Melian feels a tug at the edges of her being, a call from beyond the circles of the world. The Valor do not often summon their kind back to Valinor, but the choice is laid before her now like a road, suddenly clear in moonlight. She could stay, could fight for the scraps of Doriath, until the earth itself is spent. Or she could step onto that unseen path, carrying all she has learned of love and loss to a place where wisdom might yet grow from ruin. When she turns away from Menigroth, it is not in defeat, but in recognition. Kingdoms rise and fall, oaths twist like vines, choking those who cling to them too tightly. But stories endure. The wind lifts her hair as she walks, not westward, not yet, but to the edges of the forest, where the trees still remember her name. There is one last thing to do before she goes. Beneath an oak older than grief, she kneels and presses her palm to the soil. The song she sings now is not one of power, but of memory, of thanks. The earth answers, not with magic, but with the quiet resilience of roots, pushing through cracks in stone. Let the sons of Feanor claim their hollow victory. Let the dwarves bear their stolen prize to whatever end awaits it. Doriath's true legacy was never in walls or jewels, but in the lives that flourished here, if only for a while. When she rises, her steps leave no imprint on the moss. The shadows gather around her, not as a shield, but as a farewell. Middle-earth fades like a dream upon waking. And the girdle, that great and fragile work of heart and hand, dissolves at last, not with a cry, but with the gentleness of a hand unclasping from another's, when both know it is time to let go. The last notes of Melian's song linger in the air, softer than dew on spider silk, trembling like the final breath of a candle's flame. There is no fanfare, no crack of thunder, only the slow unfurling of a magic that had held for ages, now dissolving like mist under the first light of dawn. The trees, once alive with whispered secrets, stand motionless. No wind stirs their leaves, no footsteps rustle the undergrowth. Even the birds have ceased their singing, as if the forest itself knows the heart that sustained it has moved beyond reach. Those who linger in the ruins of Doriath elves with hollow eyes, children clutching the hems of their parents' cloaks, watch the empty spaces where the girdle's light once shimmered. Some reach out as if to catch the fading strands, but their hands close on nothing. The air smells different now, sharper, thinner, stripped of the sweetness that once made it seem like breathing in starlight. An old healer named Lindir presses his forehead to the bark of a birch and weeps. She kept the shadows at bay. He murmurs, "What keeps them now?" The land answers in its own way. Rivers that once ran clear as glass now carry silt from upturned earth. Flowers that bloomed year-round wither overnight, their petals curling like fists around lost warmth. And yet, there are signs the forest remembers. In a glade where Melian often walked, a single sapling pushes through the ash-blackened soil, its leaves tinged with silver at the edges. It is a small thing, fragile as hope, but it grows. Far to the west, where the sea meets the sky, a shadow moves across the waves. None in Middle-earth see it, but the Valor do. They recognize the shape of her sorrow, the weight of her wisdom. Melian does not look back as the shores fade behind her. Some griefs are too vast to carry over water. Back in Doriath, a child picks up a fallen acorn and tucks it into her pocket. She does not know why, perhaps because it feels like a secret or a promise. The elders speak of new homes, of journeys to make before winter comes. But for now, they pause, they listen, and in the silence, if they strain their ears, they might almost hear it, the echo of a melody woven so deeply into the earth that not even absence can erase it entirely. The girdle is gone, the queen is gone, yet somewhere between the roots and the stars, the story is not quite finished, only sleeping. Years pass like leaves falling in an endless autumn, and the ruins of Doriath settle deeper into the earth, their stones worn smooth by rain and memory. Yet those who dare to walk the overgrown paths speak of things that cannot be explained, of shadows that move without a source, of whispers that coil through the branches like half-remembered lullabies. A hunter from the east, his hands calloused from bowstrings, swears he laid his head upon a moss-covered rock to rest and heard a woman's voice humming a tune that stilled the ache in his bones. When he woke, his wounds were closed, though no healer had touched him. It was her, he murmurs to anyone who will listen, the queen who walked in twilight. She's still here, not all of her left. The elves who once called Doriath home return sometimes, drawn by dreams they cannot name. They trace their fingers over carvings half buried in ivy, their throats tight with grief and something else, something like recognition. The air smells different here, they say. Not the old sweetness of Melian's magic, but something quieter, like the scent of rain before it falls. A minstrel named Cathalion sits beneath the broken arch of what was once the great hall and plucks the strings of his harp. The notes are hesitant at first, then stronger, as if the wind itself is guiding his fingers. The land remembers, he tells the few who gather to listen. Not the way we do, with words and tears, but in the way roots remember water, even in a drought. Not all the echoes are kind. A woodsman from Brethil staggers into a tavern one evening, his eyes wild, his shirt torn as if by thorns. He babbles of voices that hissed at him from the trees, of vines that slithered like snakes around his ankles, holding him fast until he swore never to hunt in those glades again. The other patrons exchange glances. Everyone knows the old tales, how the girdle turned cruel near the end, how it twisted against those who meant harm. Magic doesn't die, mutters the innkeeper, wiping a tankard clean with more force than needed. It just changes its mind about who's welcome. Scholars from Gondolin, before their own fall, pore over maps and scrolls, arguing about what truly became of the girdle. Some claim it unraveled entirely when Melian departed. Others insist that enchantments woven so deeply into the earth cannot simply vanish, that they seep into the soil, waiting for a hand skilled enough to gather the threads anew. A young scribe named Elanor, her fingers stained with ink, spends nights copying fragments of song said to be the last Melian sang in Doriath. She doesn't know if the words still hold power, but she whispers them anyway, testing the air for shivers. Maybe it's not about bringing it back, she muses to her empty chamber. Maybe it's about learning what it left behind, and then there are the children. They play among the ruins, too young to fear ghosts, their laughter bouncing off the stones like sunlight. They chase each other through the hollows where great lords once stood, their small hands brushing against carvings of faces they do not recognize. When asked, they say the forest sings to them, sometimes not in words, but in feelings, a warmth when they're cold, a nudge toward home when dusk falls too quickly. Their parents call it fancy, but the oldest among them, a woman who remembers the weight of the girdle's light, watches the children with wet eyes. The magic wasn't just hers, she says. It was ours too, and children know how to listen for things the rest of us have forgotten. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of damp earth and something fainter, a note of melody, perhaps, or the ghost of a touch against the skin. The ruins stand silent, but not empty, not quite, and high above, where the branches weave together like clasped hands, the leaves tremble as if answering a question no one dared to ask aloud. The water in Galadriel's mirror swirls like liquid starlight, its surface trembling not with visions of what will be, but with whispers of what once was. Faces flicker in the depths, Melian's sorrowful gaze, the shattered gates of Menigroth, the slow unraveling of a magic that could not outlast the pride of those it sheltered. Lothlorien's golden leaves rustle above her, their light filtering through the canopy like a gentle reproach. You have seen how it ends, the forest seems to murmur. Now, how will you begin? Her fingers hover above the water, close enough to feel the cool kiss of its magic. The mirror shows her no clear path, only reflections of choices not yet made. A kingdom wrapped too tightly in enchantment becomes a cage. A realm left unguarded is a feast for wolves. The balance is fragile, a spider's web strung between two thorns. Too much tension, and it snaps. Too little, and it sags into uselessness. She thinks of Celeborn, steadfast as the roots of the Malorn trees, of their people who trust her to keep the shadows at bay without shutting out the starlight. Melian's greatest error was not the girdle itself, but the belief that love alone could sustain it when the hearts it sheltered grew brittle with isolation. A breeze stirs the clearing, carrying the scent of Nifredil blossoms. Galadriel closes her eyes. When she sings, her voice is softer than Melian's had been, the melody woven not with unyielding might, but with flexibility, a net that bends but does not break. The magic settles over Kara's Galadhen like a sigh, not a shield but a question, testing the intent of those who approach. Let the malevolent find their steps turned aside. Let the lost and weary glimpse a light through the trees, drawing them toward warmth. Her mirror darkens at last, its waters still. The past has spoken, the future waits. Galadriel turns away, her bare feet silent on the moss. The rings on her fingers gleam, not with the cold fire of the Silmarils, but with something quieter, a light that knows its own limits. She will not repeat Doriath's fate, not because she is wiser than Melian, but because she has learned from her. The greatest protections are not walls, but bridges, and a queen's true power lies not in defiance, but in discernment. High above, a lark trills, its song threading through the golden leaves. Somewhere beyond the borders, darkness stirs, but here, for now, the forest breathes in peace. Galadriel smiles just slightly. Let the mirror gather dust a while. She has work to do. The elves of Middle-earth still sing of Melian, though the songs grow quieter with each passing age, like embers cooling in a hearth. Her name, lingers in the spaces between words, spoken less as history and more as a sigh, a thing too tender for blunt recollection. To the Sindar who once dwelt in Doriath's twilight, she was the queen who wove safety from starlight. To the Noldor, a reminder that even the mightiest can be undone by the frailties of those they cherish. But in Valinor, where the two trees once cast their glow upon her face, her absence is a different kind of echo. The Maiar who walked the gardens of Lorien pause, where she once stood among the silver willows, their melodies faltering where her voice should have risen to meet theirs. It is not grief that hushes them, but wonder, how a being of such radiance could choose a mortal love, could bind her fate to a world of sorrow and fading things. The bards of Turin tell her story with harps strung in minor keys, their fingers tracing the old, aching question, was it worth it? The girdle's unraveling, Thingol's fall, the blood spilled over a jewel that brought no joy to any hand that held it. Some say yes, that even broken, the love she bore for Doriath was a flame that lit the dark longer than any untouched star could have. Others shake their heads, murmuring of wasted power, of a Maia who poured eternity into a vessel that could only ever hold a drop. But the truth, as it often does, lingers in the unspoken spaces. In the quiet hours when the lamps burn low, the elves who remember whisper of the lessons woven into Melian's tale. That protection, no matter how fiercely crafted, cannot outlast the wisdom of those it shelters. That love is not a spell to be cast, but a choice renewed each dawn. And perhaps most of all, that endings are not erasures. The girdle may be gone, but the saplings that push through Doriath's ruins still bend toward the light, as if guided by an unseen hand. The winds that sigh through the broken halls carry a cadence too deliberate to be chance. Even now, when a wanderer stumbles upon a glade where the air shimmers with misplaced warmth, or when a child laughs at the touch of a breeze that carries no scent of earth or salt, the elves exchange glances heavy with meaning. They do not say her name aloud. They do not need to. Some silences are not empty. They are waiting. The elf's fingers tremble as he plucks the silver thread from the gnarled roots, its glow so faint it might be mistaken for moonlight, if moonlight could hum. The sound is barely there, a whisper of a melody he hasn't heard in centuries, not since the halls of Menigroth echoed with harps instead of silence. He holds it to his ear, and for a heartbeat, the forest around him shifts. The trees stand taller, their leaves shimmering with that old, impossible light. The air smells of Nifrdil blossoms and hearth smoke, of home. Then the vision fades, leaving only the thread and the ache in his chest. He should leave it. Let the past stay buried, but his hands move before his mind can protest, tucking the thread into the hidden pocket of his cloak, the one sewn shut after the ruin of Doriath. It weighs nothing, yet it drags at him like an anchor. What use is a single thread when the tapestry it came from is ash? But then, what use is memory? What use is breath? Some things are kept not for their purpose, but for the way they make the unbearable feel, for a moment, lighter. The thread pulses against his ribs as he walks, a phantom heartbeat. It sings to him in fragments, a line of a lullaby his mother once crooned, the opening notes of a dance played at the summer solstice. Once, he would have wept. Now his eyes stay dry. Grief, he's learned, is not always a storm. Sometimes it's the slow erosion of stone, the quiet wearing away of what once seemed unbreakable. He isn't the only one who remembers. The trees do too. Their roots clutch at the soil where the girdle's magic once sank deep, as if trying to hold onto something they can no longer name. An owl calls overhead, its cry slicing through the dark. He wonders if it's the same bird that watched Melian walk these paths, if it remembers the way her robes trailed like spilled ink over the moss. The thought is foolish, but grief makes fools of them all. By dawn, he reaches the edge of the forest, where the land slopes down to a river thick with reeds. The thread grows warmer in his pocket, as if protesting the distance. He could cast it into the water, let the current carry it away, or he could keep it, let it sear its song into his bones until he, too, is nothing but a relic. The choice knots in his throat. In the end, he does neither. Instead, he kneels at the riverbank and presses the thread into the mud, covering it with a flat stone. Let it sink, let it sleep, let it be found or not by someone with kinder hands. As he stands, the wind lifts the edges of his cloak, and for the first time in years, it doesn't feel like a ghost tugging him back. The owl calls again, farther away now. The elf walks on. Behind him, beneath the stone, the thread's melody lingers, not gone, not yet, just waiting. The wind carries more than just the scent of damp earth through the hollows of Doriath. It carries whispers. Not the rustle of leaves or the creak of branches, but voices, faint as half-remembered dreams. A young elf named Liriel crouches beside a fallen pillar, her palm pressed to the moss that crawls over its carvings. The stone is cool, but not silent. If she holds her breath, she can hear it, a thread of melody, no louder than a spider's step. It's not a song she knows, not one sung in her lifetime, and yet her fingers tighten. The tune pulls at something deep in her chest, like a hook snagging on a forgotten stitch. She shouldn't be here. The elders warned her Doriath's ruins are heavy with grief, they said, and grief has teeth. But Liriel has always been a creature of curiosity, her ears tuned to the spaces between words. Now, as twilight stains the broken arches, she follows the sound deeper into the woods, where the trees grow twisted and ancient. Their bark is scarred, their roots knotted around shattered stones, yet they hum, not the rich chorus of the old tales, but a frayed, faltering thing, like a loom with half its threads snapped. A glade opens before her, its center marked by a circle of silver-barked saplings. They're too young to have known Melian's reign, yet their leaves shimmer with the same impossible light that once dappled Doriath's halls. Liriel steps closer, her boots sinking into moss so thick it muffles her footsteps. The air here is different, thicker, sweeter, as if the twilight itself has pooled into something tangible. And then she hears it, a voice not from the trees, but from the earth. Little listener, the words aren't spoken aloud. They vibrate up through the soles of her feet, resonating in her bones. Liriel freezes. The voice is neither kind nor unkind. It's simply as old as bedrock, patient as roots. You hear the broken songs. Why? Her tongue sticks to the roof of her mouth. She could lie, she could run. Instead, she kneels, pressing both palms to the moss. Because no one else does, she whispers. The silence stretches, taut as a bowstring. Then, softer than snowfall, the glade sighs. The saplings sway, their leaves brushing together in a harmony that makes Liriel's eyes burn. It's not a spell, not a ghost, just a memory, lingering where the world has worn thin. The voice doesn't speak again, but the air hums with something like approval. or perhaps sorrow. When Liriel rises at last, her knees damp with dew, the melody follows her to the edge of the trees. Not whole, not healed, but alive, and that, she thinks as she tucks a silver leaf into her sleeve, is enough for now. Dreams come to the elves of Middle-earth like mist rolling over forgotten paths, soft at first, then all-encompassing. In the hush between midnight and dawn, when even the stars seem to hold their breath, they dream of a veil woven not from silk or shadow, but from the very breath of the world. It shimmers at the edges of their vision, this half-remembered girdle, its light a pale echo of the radiance that once cradled Doriath. Some reach for it in their sleep, fingers brushing empty air, and wake with palms damp with dew or cheeks streaked with salt. Others rise with a fire in their chests, a resolve as sharp as a newly forged blade. This will not be the last memory of sanctuary. The dreams are never the same. For an old smith in the havens, it's the scent of Nifrdil blossoms that lingers upon waking. So vivid he stumbles outside, half expecting to find the flowers blooming in the salty coastal wind. A young weaver in Lothlorien dreams not of the girdle itself, but of the silence that followed its fall, a hush so deep it choked the birds from the sky. She spends her days afterward dyeing threads and colors she can't name, chasing hues that exist only in that lost twilight, and in the ruined halls of Menigroth, where ivy claws at the shattered throne, a sentinel who once stood guard under Melian's gaze dreams of a voice murmuring, "You were not meant to mourn forever." What stirs these visions now, so long after the girdle's end? Perhaps it's the land itself, whispering through root and rock, or perhaps it's the elves, their souls straining toward a time when magic was not just a tool, but a covenant. The girdle was more than a spell. It was a promise that light could hold back the dark, that love could carve out a space safe enough for joy to take root. To dream of it is to touch that promise again, however fleetingly. Not all who dream find comfort. A scout from Mirkwood wakes gasping, his skin prickling as if the girdle's threads had tightened around his throat. He knows too well the cost of such enchantments, how they fray, how they fail. Yet even he, pragmatic as the blade at his hip, catches himself tracing the outline of the dream in the dirt the next morning, a circle unbroken. And then there are those who do not dream at all. They are the ones who walk the fastest through the ruins, who refuse to meet the gaze of the silver-leaved saplings pushing through the cracks. They've folded their longing away like a letter never sent. But sometimes, when the wind carries the scent of rain-soaked earth, they pause, just for a heartbeat. Just long enough to wonder. The girdle is gone, but its echo lingers, not as a lament, but as a question. What will the elves build with the fragments of that dream? A wall, a bridge, or something entirely new, stitched from the quiet courage of those who still believe in light. The night holds its breath, waiting. And somewhere, beneath the weight of memory and hope, the first thread of an answer begins to hum, far beyond the circles of the world, where the light of the two trees lingers like a whisper. Melian stands at the edge of Valinor's shores. Her eyes, older than the mountains of Middle-earth, are fixed on the horizon, not the shimmering one before her, but the one she carries in her heart. The salt wind tangles in her hair, but it's the scent of Nifrdil and damp earth she longs for, the rustle of beech leaves in a forest that no longer knows her name. She opens her lips, and what spills forth is not a spell, not a summons, but a lament, a song woven from the threads of memory, the first laughter of Luthien, the weight of Thingol's hand in hers, the way the girdle hummed beneath her fingers like a living thing. Her voice is softer now, frayed by time and grief, yet it carries. The winds of time, those restless messengers, catch the melody and spin it outward, eastward, always eastward. In Valinor's golden groves, the Maia still their own songs to listen, not out of reverence, but recognition. They've heard sorrow before, but this is different. This is love turned to longing, a note so sharp it could carve stone. Even Nienna, whose tears water the roots of the world, pauses in her weeping. Some losses are too vast for even her comfort. The lament changes as it travels. Over the waves, it becomes the sigh of the tide. Through the mountains, the echo in deep caves. By the time it reaches Middle Earth, it's little more than a tremor in the grass, a shiver along the skin of those who once called Doriath home. An elf gathering herbs in the shadow of the Erd Luin straightens suddenly, her basket forgotten. Was that? No, the wind plays tricks, but her hands shake as she kneels again, and the next breath she takes is ragged. Melian doesn't sing for an audience. She sings because silence would be a betrayal. Every note is a stitch in a tapestry. Only she can see threads of joy and ruin, of whispers and shouts, of a kingdom that was and will never be again. The Valor, in their wisdom, do not interrupt. They understand. Some songs must be sung to the end, even if no one remains to hear them. And then, just as the last note trembles in the air, something shifts. Not in Valinor, but far away, in a glade where silver saplings claw toward the sky. A single leaf detaches, spinning on an unfelt breeze. It doesn't fall. It drifts, as if caught in an unseen hand, and lands gently atop a moss-covered stone. The sigh that follows isn't the wind. It's an answer, faint, broken. But there, Melian's fingers curl into her palms. She doesn't smile, doesn't weep, but the next breath she takes is deeper, as if something long clenched in her chest has finally let go. The Valor turn away, leaving her to the quiet and the twilight. Some prayers don't need words, some answers don't need voices, and some love, even fractured, never truly ends. The air above the ruins of Menigroth shivers like heat on a summer road, and then, she is there, not as flesh, not as memory, but as something between the two, a figure woven from starlight and longing. Melian's spirit hovers where the great gates once stood, her feet grazing the moss that now blankets the shattered stones. The wind stills, the birds fall silent. Even the leaves seem to hold their breath. Her hand lifts, fingers outstretched, and the air responds. Threads of silver light spiral from her fingertips, dancing like dust motes in a sunbeam. They twist and knot, weaving a pattern too vast for mortal eyes to follow. A ghostly echo of the girdle's once impenetrable web. For a heartbeat, the ruins shimmer. The broken pillars stand whole again, crowned with ivy instead of ruin. The scent of Nifredil blooms rises from the earth, sweet and impossibly alive. A child's laughter rings faintly from the trees, though no child has played here in centuries. Then, like mist under morning sun, the vision wavers, the light dims. The pillars crumble back into time's embrace. Melian's form blurs at the edges, her face tilting toward the sky, as if listening to a voice only she can hear. The last threads of the girdle stretch, thin as spider silk, before snapping one by one. Each break is soundless, yet the land feels it. A shudder through root and rock, a final release. She does not fight the unraveling. Her arms fall to her sides, her head bowing. The sigh that escapes her is not sorrow, nor relief, but something older than both. The sound of a story reaching its last page. The wind returns, rushing through the clearing, as if to fill the space she leaves behind. It carries her away, not in a blaze of light, but in a scattering of silver sparks, like embers from a dying fire. The forest exhales. Somewhere, a sapling pushes through the soil where her feet last hovered, its leaves already tinged with that same impossible glow. The tale is told, the circle is closed, yet the air hums just faintly, with the aftertaste of magic not gone, but changed, as all things must be. The tale of the Girdle of Melian does not fade like morning mist when the sun climbs high. It lingers, woven into the very fabric of Middle-earth's memory, a whisper caught between the pages of history and the breath of those who still tell it. What endures is not just the story of a kingdom lost or a magic unraveled, but something far more profound. The truth that love, no matter how fiercely spun, cannot outpace the choices of those it seeks to shelter. Doriath's fall was not a failure of enchantment, but a reckoning with the oldest lesson of all, that even starlight must bow to the weight of pride, of oaths, of hearts that forget how to bend. Yet listen closely when the wind sighs through the ruins of Menigroth. There's a hush there, a resonance deeper than sorrow. The elves who pass beneath those broken arches speak of it, how the moss grows thicker where Melian once walked, how saplings born centuries after her departure still turn their leaves skyward as if awaiting a blessing. The land remembers, not as we do, with words and weeping, but in the way roots remember water, in the way stones hold the echo of footsteps long gone. The girdle may be dust, but its purpose lingers not as a shield, but as a question etched into the earth. What does it mean to protect, to cherish, to build something knowing it cannot last? The bards who sing of Doriath often pause here, their harps trembling. They know the weight of the silence that follows. For all its grandeur, the kingdom's legacy is not one of triumph, but of tenderness, a reminder that the most enduring magic is not the kind that bars the door against the night, but the kind that teaches us how to face it. When Galadriel walks the golden glades of Lothlorien, her own enchantments lighter and more yielding than Melian's, she carries that wisdom like a lantern. When Elrond shelters the weary in Rivendell, his halls open as much to the world's sorrow as to its hope. He honors the same truth. And what of those who hear the tale now, far from the forests of Beleriand, in ages where elves are memory and magic is rumor? The story shifts, as all stories do, but its heart remains. It speaks to anyone who has ever loved something fragile, a child, a dream, a patch of earth, and known the terrible, beautiful gamble of trying to keep it safe. The girdle's threads may have snapped, but their shadow still falls across us, in the choices we make between fear and trust, in the walls we build or dismantle, in the quiet, understanding that some shelters are not made of spells, but of hands held open. So let the lament for Doriath be sung, but let it be sung without despair. Ruins are not endings, they are invitations, to remember, to learn, to weave anew. The light that once flickered in Melian's palms now glimmers elsewhere, in hearths and hearts she never knew. And if you stand very still in the right places, where the world wears thin, you might just feel it, the ghost of a melody, the brush of fingers against yours, the unshakable sense that love, even when it falters, never truly lets go.